Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of the Articulate Fly, and we're back with another East Tennessee fishing report with Ellis Ward. Ellis, how are you?
I am doing well now, Marv. How are you?
I'm just trying to stay out of trouble, and you were lucky. You had moved out of town and you're in Jonesboro, and you were spared the worst of it, but the folks around you weren't really. You want to I know people are kind of eager to hear kind of firsthand kind of what are you seeing in the Johnson City, Elizabethton area where you kind of fish.
Yeah, I'm doing my best to not say a tale of two cities, but it kind of is. Johnson City proper and Bristol, Bluff City. I mean, really, the tailwaters themselves, it's their tailwaters. They were insulated to a certain extent. It's the towns and anything around any of the freestones. And just to give people some context of, the extent of this, the degree to which a freestone can pick up and move water. And I'll just use the Doe as an example. And this is a river that runs, I can feel it when Wilbur Dam, when the Watauga tailwater is running 1700 CFS, and below the confluence of the Doe, I can feel that. I can feel the difference when the Doe is pushing 200, 250, because it's normally in the 50 to 100. When the Watauga is low and the Doe is over 100 CFS, you can tell going over rocks, or, the lanes are wider. The super skinny kind of shady stuff, some of the drops in the middle river, they're just easier. And that's at 100 CFS. And that difference between 100 and, 200, 250, that's really, really meaningful. When it's up at like 400, 500 CFS, that's kind of blown out. Chocolate milk, debris in the water. When it's at 800, if it's pushing 1,000, that's where we start seeing water in some of the boat ramp parking lots, and a tree, new banks start getting eroded, that type of stuff. So that's at 1,000, which doesn't happen that often. That river was up to 17,000 CFS, and it's just not. It doesn't have the bank structure for that. It doesn't have floodplains, and the Watauga tailwater is so insulated and so regular that you just don't have those wide eroding floodplains. So I know that the Sycamore Shoals Ballad Hospital was being evacuated. I think that was Friday evening. And as I'm talking about this, not having floodplains, not meant for this, bank erosion, all that. French Broad, where I've spent untold hours the last 5 years musky fishing, in the last couple of years musky guiding, the numbers there are just astronomical. And it's gauges that normally read 100, 200 CFS are reading 10,000, 15,000. The French Broad going through Asheville, I mean, people can look up some of the destruction here. It's just cleaning out anything that was adjacent to the, one-story shops and little restaurants adjacent to the river. It's a parking lot. It's a mud flat. 5 minutes from me on the Nolichucky, there's a bridge that looks like some sort of war footage when you drive up to it. And I went down to the next three bridges, and it's all the same. They're just, it's just evaporation. There's not even traces of abutments. It's just fully carried down, 50,000 CFS, pushing through there. And you can see just with dirt marks, it's 200-300 yards on either side of what would even be a big flood before. So, it's weird. It's weird being 5 minutes from that. And we lost power, but we had water. It's what got hit so hard. And then, other people may have lost power or water, but I mean, if you weren't in that direct hit, it's not like a hurricane with the winds. Like this was strictly rain and flooding, and so you have people with complete losses of their home, and I'm not kidding you, 50 yards away with a little bit of elevation, the neighbor's house is 100% untouched. So I don't know, it's been weird, I would say, and I think I felt okay enough about whatever moral compass that is still left in me to go out and start fishing the South Holston, because, I mean, come on, dude, the flows were looking great. I don't want to desensitize it too much, but there's a lot of places that, I would say localized and very significant damage that need help. And I think you were talking about putting some links into the show notes here. But it's kind of a tough one because it's not like Florida, like you get a hurricane. What are you doing with insurance? Why isn't your house set, on stilts, etc.? Like, it's, I don't want to say once in a lifetime or more, but statistically, that's what we're looking at.
Yeah, it's incredibly devastating. I mean, loss of life, loss of property. I mean, it's going to take, years to get back to normal. I guess what I would say, folks, is last week I put out a blog post, and I'll link to it in the show notes, that gives you some donation ideas for Southwest Virginia, Western North Carolina, and East Tennessee, that are, state agencies and large charities that are funneling money to the people that are on the ground. One of the things that I've suggested across the board is, as it becomes easier to get back into East Tennessee and Western North Carolina, tourism is incredibly important to that part of the world. And you need to go and do your best to support local merchants. And that includes fly shops and fishing guides. And I think one of the things that you can definitely do is you can buy gift certificates and gift cards so that there's revenue coming into these local communities. But also, too, if you have trips booked, don't cancel the trips if you can possibly do it, and let the guides and the shops keep the money, because it is going to be a very, very long road back. But I will drop those links in the show notes. And I would also say, too, that our friends at Visit Johnson City have kind of shifted from tourism to supporting the community. And, if you're in need, you can go there, charge your phone, get water, get help finding hotel rooms. Alec Castro is my contact there, but the whole team there is ready to help. And as we have more information, we will certainly push it out in our social media channels, and on the website and in the podcast. And, we'll kind of shift a little bit. I did have a question for you, Ellis from Brenner, and, he's getting ready for musky season, and he wanted to get your thoughts on kind of the best materials to incorporate into your musky flies so that you get good kills when you strip the fly.
Okay. Yeah, we'll do a hard pivot. We can talk about the other stuff for a long time, but very, very briefly, I'd also say John at Tailwater Flyco has been reaching out. And I know you've talked with him as well, so there's a bunch of good resources there too. All right, pivoting to fishing report question answering. So for fly tying, I love this question, and we didn't get a chance to talk about it before this call, so thoughts coming at you live here. Two materials that I like the most for what he's talking about, which is getting a pronounced stop of the front part of the fly, so that you get, or you can get, some form of dog walk. I would say with some of the smaller musky flies, you can, if you are going to add weight, using something like brass dumbbell eyes, you really don't need to do that. I like to do it occasionally if I'm tying with shanks. and with a small trailer hook, because if you think about the difference between like a 5/0 hook and a shank, there's so much more metal, so much more weight in that hook. So if you're tying on a shank, putting some lead wraps or something actually helps with the momentum and then some of that castability if it's a pretty big fly. And then if you shift that up front, then you can, depending on what type of material you're using, you can get a little bit of a jig. I'm guessing what he's talking about, and something that I focus on much more, is bucktail, or the synthetic that I love for this, strung fuzzy. And I would throw another option in there, and this is kind of a sort of a curveball, but craft fur with either a flexible UV coating, and if you feel like putting eyes on it, great. But if you shape it in a way that encourages movement side to side, so saying that another way, if you shape it skinnier on the sides and taller on the top and the bottom, that encourages side to side movement, because that kill happens when you remove your pulling force and the fly is left in the water. And so you get the kill when the force against that fly, which can come through friction, it can come through buoyancy. When the force of the water against the front part of that fly is much greater than it is against any other part of that fly. And so, with the swim bug, for example, which I have some versions that I fish for musky, you have a bunch of buoyancy up front with the deer hair head, and it's like trying to put an exercise ball underwater, something that's really buoyant. It doesn't want to be in there, and it gets moved very easily by the water because it doesn't want to be in there. On the other side of the spectrum would be a bare hook. That would just fall through the water. So the more buoyant you get, the more sensitive the head shape is. And then you look at, that craft, for example, that's just surface area. So if you have, looking at the front of the fly, like looking at its nose, and it's skinny on the left and the right, but tall on the top, tall on the bottom, and maybe even wider on the top, you're going to have the most friction wherever you have the most surface area. So that would be at the top if you're just looking at it straight on. Once you stop stripping that, it's going to get pushed one way or the other, because it's not a perfect system. When it gets pushed one way or the other, if the sides are markedly a bigger surface area than the top or the bottom, it's going to get slammed sideways, and it'll look like its tail is kicking out and its head's going back. So bucktail, honestly, same deal, and it's why the bulkhead, the Buford, that platform, it can be so effective, because when tied properly, just having something buoyant up front is going to give you that dog walk and kill. And then strung fuzzy, I'll encourage people to watch some of the videos that Gunnar Bremer has done. I've done a couple flies with it on YouTube, but you can get that stuff pretty dense and shape a head that responds with that kill, because there's a lot of friction. But it doesn't come with the buoyancy, so some trade-off, and sometimes you do want that. And I'm going to be appreciative of our time here, Marv, and stop talking.
Well, that's good. I'll tell the snipers to stand down. Folks, we love questions on the articulate fly. You can email them to us or DM us on social media. whatever's easiest for you. And if we use your question, I will send you some articulate fly swag. And we are drawing for some cool stuff from Ellis at the end of the season. And, Ellis, before I let you go, you want to let folks know where they can find you and book you and all that kind of good stuff?
Yeah. Best way to reach me is my cell phone at 513-543-0019. Instagram is Ellis Ward Guides, and trip information, you can send a booking request, email, look at fun pictures at elliswardflies.com.
Well, folks, our thoughts and prayers are with everybody in East Tennessee, Western North Carolina, and Southwest Virginia that have been impacted by the hurricane. And, if you need help, there's some resources. Visit Johnson City. If you folks want to make a donation, I'll drop the link to some options in the show notes. And if you have information that you would like for me to share on the podcasts or in my social media channels, just reach out. I'm happy to do that. And, we hope that everyone's able to kind of, move forward the best they can. And we're thinking about you. And, again, if you can, support the local communities as they sort of come back to life, that would be terrific too. Tight lines, everybody. Tight lines, Ellis.
Appreciate it, Marv.